My name is Lewis, for anyone that doesn't know, and today we will be doing a battle. We'll be talking about a battle between the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Counts, so an Undead off. Before we get started, this is my first ever battle report I've recorded, so please bear with me. It is not going to be quite as polished as Young Edward's battle reports are, but I'm hoping you enjoy it anyway. One thing that we really like, the guy I play, Chris, and I really love about Old World is line hammer. So we both committed to bringing lots of infantry. I know there's a lot of people going around saying they're not the most strong things in the game at the moment, but neither of us particularly care. We just love smashing infantry into each other. So expect lots of skeletons and lots of meaty combats. That's what I can promise you today. This is a game where Chris is relatively new, so he's a really good gamer. Like, he's fantastic at 40k, played fantasy ages and ages ago, so apologies if we get any slight Tomb Kings errors. I don't think we did. I think we deliberately kept the list nice and simple, so hope there's no major mistakes in there. There is one mistake that we did catch about halfway through the game when we realised that Chris's skeletons, so his infantry units, are on slightly the wrong size bases. We only realised when we crashed them into each other and realised my stuff was all on bigger bases. So I don't think it overall has a massive impact on the game, but just worth bearing in mind that we did notice it and looked it up, and we did get that wrong, but I think it's absolutely fine. So, on to the lists then, starting with the Tomb Kings. So Chris has gone for 3 characters here. He's gone for the High Priest, which he's made a level 4 wizard, given the Talisman protection for the ward save, and taken the Necromancy lore. He rolled up Unquiet Spirit, Spiritual Vortex and Curse of Years, and then we swapped another spell for the Desert Wind spell, which is the spell that allows all of his units to do reserve move, which is, anyone that's played Undead will know how critically important that is. Then we've got the Tomb King. This Tomb King is on a dragon, the Necrolyth Bone Dragon, and is Chris's general. He's given him the Flail of Skulls weapon and the ridiculously good armour called Armour of the Ages, which is the piece of armour that means that any successful wound against the Tomb King needs to be re-rolled. That will come up quite a lot in this game. And then he's gone for a Mortuary Priest. Has 55 points left to spend, level 1 wizard with Necromancy, which you've swapped out of the Desert Wind. Usually a character you can keep quite at the back of a Undead army and try and dish out that reserve move. I know level 1 wizards aren't considered the most powerful things in the world, but actually if you get them out of the spell range, and the Tomb King's Desert Wind spell isn't actually too difficult to cast, so I think this actually works out quite well. Into core, this is where Chris has put a lot of his points. As I say, we like big infantry units, so this is what we're going for. 28 Tomb Guards to get started. He's given them the full command and the Nehekaran Phalanx, which is the thing that allows them not to give ground if they don't want to. We've then got 5 Skeleton Horse Archers, which are the skirmishy horse archer units. They are really good. Gosh, got the warbows with them. Really quite like those. Then got 15 Skeleton Archers, also with the bows. They are basically just the caddy unit for the High Priest, so they'll spend most of the game at the back of the board. And then 2 big blocks of 25 Skeleton Warriors. Give them spears and shields and a full command. Going into special, 3 Necropolis Knights with cavalry spears and full command. 4 of those Ushabti Ritual Blade heavy armor units. They are fantastic. I really love the Ushabti. They are absolute beatsticks. And last but not least, the Necrosphinx. Always good to have a big monster, especially a big monster with a couple of Monster Slayer attacks built in. On to the Vampire Counts. So this is a list I've been playing around with. Anyone that's been watching our other videos, our progress videos on our hobby and things like that, this is the sort of list I'm building towards. I've played other games with it now, and I'm thinking of reducing the amount of infantry and adding in a Mortis engine, but as I say, we want to play some Light Hammer today, so we're keeping all the Skeleton Warriors in. Got my vampire count to get us started on the zombie dragon. This is Alicia von Carstein herself on the Dragon Shroud. Gone with the Spell Eater axe. This is the one that gives magic resistance 2. I'm thinking after using this for a few times, I'm just going to find the points in a Dread Lance. I just much prefer that lance. Also gone for the Talisman of Protection for the 5-up ward save, and Dark Acolyte, which will allow the dragon to heal herself and units around her using the Resurrecting. Same as the Necromancer. Speaking of the Necromancer, Mildred the Bony, she's brought along her Scepter of Denarwo today, which allows her to do the double resurrection, and the Cloak of Mist and Shadows, which makes her ethereal. Level 4 wizard again, Hellish Vigor, Deathly Cabal, Unquiet Spirits, and Spirit Leech. Again, I've swapped out for Hellish Vigor for the reserve move. Last but I've got 2 more characters. The White Lord, just give him the Biting Blade, really cheap magic weapon, and he is our battle standard bearer for the Undead with the War Banner. And finally, we've got the Tomb Banshee. Got to chuck a couple of screams in there. It would be rude not to, really, but I do like her for 90 points. Onto my infantry. It's a very similar theme to Chris. 2 big units of 25 skeleton warriors. I haven't given them spears. I've gone for the shields and armour, but they have got a champion and standard bearer. 2 units of 5 direwolves, really useful little kind of tech piece units. I really have not mastered these yet. I'm starting to get there, but they just tend to die, so I need to keep practicing them and try and get a bit better with them. And then a big block of 20 Graveguard, shields, heavy armour, full command, and I've given them the Drakenhof banner for the 5-up regen. And then last but not least, heading into my rare, jumping in with the Terrorgeist. Do love the Terrorgeist. Not quite as good as a zombie dragon, but the Scream is incredibly useful, and it's just nice to have another big threat on the board. And then 5 Blood Knights to round off the list. Full plate armour, and I've given the Castellan the supernatural horror ability to cause terror. Clearly, in this matchup, that is completely useless, but in general, that is a fantastic upgrade to have on your Blood Knights. So, moving into deployment, I won the roll-off and I chose to drop first because that would give me the +1 for seeing who go first. Started with all of my infantry in the centre of the board. You'll see I've put the dire wolves in marching column. They obviously can't march because they're one of the undead units that aren't able to march, but it just compresses the size of the unit so that you don't kind of fill the whole board with all your infantry. If you consider like a 5-wide unit of dire wolves, then it takes up a lot of space. So just allows them to be nice and compact in deployment, and then I can use Vanguard, etc. to move them out. Put my Terrorgeist and Banshee on my left flank, and my Blood Knights and Zombie Dragon on the right flank. I'm really not quite 100% on the combination of flanking units that I want to achieve just yet. That left flank, it's not a major problem in this battle, but it feels like it misses the resurrection, just to be able to start healing wounds on the Terrorgeist. But then if I put the Zombie Dragon and the Terrorgeist together, that's a lot of monsters on one side, which is good in some respects. They could just get in each other's way a little bit. So answers on a postcard of how I should be deploying those units, or whether I should be switching up the list to get another resurrection in there somehow. Chris's deployment looks actually quite similar to mine, all big blocks of skeletons in the middle, and skeleton archers. He has gone with the Ushabti and the Necropolis Knights on one side, and the Horse Archers and the Necrosphinx on the other. He has kept his Zombie Dragon back in this game, so clearly a slightly more defensive mindset in regards to his dragon on this side. I think that was a good decision in the end, as it allowed the dragon to stay in the game a little bit later and be there right till the end. So, although it would be interesting to know whether he could be a bit more aggressive with it in other games. So, with that +1, I was able to get first turn. So it's a theme of this game. I'm afraid it's going to be the case with my Necromancer basically failing to do anything. I was not able to cast any of my spells turn 1. I wasn't in Dispel range or anything, I just couldn't roll dice for some reason, so didn't get any of my spells off. Which means everything is very, very slow. So I vanguarded up the dire wolves, and then they have a built-in reserve move, which I was able to use just to kind of fan them out back into combat order. and basically everything else just moved up. I just stayed just out of range of the fast unit's charge range, and meant that Chris wouldn't be able to get any first turn charges on me. But quite a simple turn one. Chris's turn one looked pretty similar to mine, with the exception that he managed to get all of his spells off. So he again moves everything forwards, and uses a combination of the Unquiet Spirit spell and the Archers to take down a whole squad of direwolves. Again, as I said earlier, I'm not 100% on using these direwolves properly. I seem to keep putting them in range of stuff and then they just die. So I think I just need to be a little bit more careful about positioning them and how fast forward they move. They could have probably been 4 inches further back, which might have just put them out of range and kept them alive. Chris has obviously, as you can see, chucked a Spiritual Vortex right in the middle of the board. Gets in the way. It debuffs my leadership, which isn't a major problem, but it is dangerous terrain, so it gets in the way of charges and means I'd probably end up losing stuff. Bit of an interesting play on my right flank with Chris is horse archers, skeleton horse archers. Now, I think he realises that if he doesn't start moving forwards with some of that stuff, my dragon might end up just being able to fly past his Necrosphinx and then get into other flanks of all of his infantry quite early in the game. So he moves some stuff into charge range. Now, clearly he doesn't want the Sphinx being charged by the dragon, but he does put the skeleton horse archers in range. Now, they are skirmishers, so he moves them in such a way that even though when I impact the first one, my overrun would need to be quite large for me to then overrun into the Necrosphinx. So it should then, in theory, if dice fall in his favour, should end up in a position where the Necrosphinx can get the charge on the dragon, and the Necrosphinx has that ability for the Monster Slayer, so has the potential just to kind of run into the dragon and strike before I do, and potentially finish me off. So I think that was a good play in the end. So moving on to my turn 2 then. Necromancer continues to be a shining example of how not to cast any spells. Completely fails to dispel the vortex and fails to cast every single spell. So he's 250 points of doing nothing at the moment. I did, however, start getting some charges in, which is always good at this point. The Terrorgeist on the left flank manages to charge the Necropolis Knights. I'm not entirely sure how this happened because Terrorgeists aren't actually that amazing in combat. They are just relatively resilient, being toughness 6, so can just usually win on causing terror and combat resolution. I managed to hit and wound with nearly all of my attacks and then roll 6 stomps. So I crushed the entire Necropolis Knight unit for no damage in return, which, as Chris pointed out, is statistically unlikely, which I would agree with. On the right-hand side, talking about statistically unlikely, Dragon charges those horse archers, finishes them off, which is not a particularly big surprise. I then do get a massive 11 inches on my overrun move and manage to hit that Sphinx. Bit of a problem for Chris. I think it was the right move to do it, but yeah, unfortunately, it didn't quite work out due to my heinous dice rolls. Everything else just moves up again. I moved the direwolves. There's again another prime example of me not really knowing what to do with the direwolves. I didn't really want to charge them into Tomb Guard because they'll just die. And there wasn't really a huge amount of other stuff in charge range, so I thought I'd just move them up and potentially, if he did want to charge them, have the Tomb Guard's flank being presented to my skeletons and my Grave Guard. So, yeah, again, not entirely sure what the best thing to do with these guys is, but I think that we'll learn that over time. Moving on to Chris's turn 2 with the Tomb Kings. His response to slightly disastrous turn of charges from my end is to do a lot of repositioning this turn. He managed to get Curse of Years off on the Grave Guard, which does a lot of debuffs on various stats, which is useful. He has an option to charge either the Direwolves or my unit of skeletons with his Tomb Guard. He elects not to, and we did have some discussions around this. If he charges the dire wolves, he probably kills them and is then at risk of getting flank charge from my Grave Guard. If he charges the skeletons, again, he probably doesn't kill the skeletons, but then he's in a prime position for a flank charge from the Blood Knights. So he elects just to shuffle forwards, doesn't move that many inches forwards, but just ends up in a position where he's just kind of stood there ready to take a charge from my end if I decide to do it. On the right hand flank, you'll see there is no longer a zombie dragon there and there is no longer a Sphinx, but have no fear, Vampire Counts fans. The zombie dragon does 4 wounds to Sphinx, who then replies but doesn't quite get that Monster Slayer attack off, and therefore dies to the combat resolution. The reason the Zombie Dragon isn't there is because I failed my restraint test, because Vampire Lords are only leadership 8. I don't know why that's been decided, but they're only leadership 8, so he just overruns off the board. So he will be back, have no fear. The Archers and Unquiet Spirits almost picks up another unit of the Direwolves, but there are 2 left, so a slightly better result for me that turn. But yeah, lots of repositioning on Chris's turn here, just to try and get into a more favourable position for the following turn. Now, moving on to battle round 3, my turn. I again failed to dispel the vortex. I don't get Hellish Vigor off or Spirit Leech, but I do, you'll be pleased to hear, cast my first spell. I get Deathly Cabal off on the Graveguard, giving them the 6-up ward save. I don't cast Unquiet Spirits either. So, whoop-de-doo, I do have a ward save, and I have officially, the Necromancer has officially done a spell. The Necromancer, to his credit, does actually resurrect a couple of the Direwolves, though, bringing that unit back up to full squad. The Direwolf then moves through the gap in between the Skeletons and the Tomb Guard. Again, I'm not particularly threatening the Skeleton Archers, but we're there in front of them just to get in the way and hopefully make Chris spend more activations just trying to kill these things. Blood Knights do make a nice charge into the big block of Skeleton Warriors on my right flank. I managed to kill 11 on the charge, which then, through the combat resolution, makes another 11 flee off the board. So I killed 22 skeletons in one turn. I elect not to follow up with the Blood Knights. I really just wanted to avoid being flank charged by the dragon. So I passed my leadership test and reform facing the dragon, which I think is better, because actually if the dragon's going to charge me, which it probably is, he'll get into the front, meaning he won't get the extra combat res to mean more Blood Knights just run off the board through crumbling away. So just buys me, hopefully, another turn of the Blood Knights being alive. My skeletons in the centre try and go after Chris's skeletons. They fail their charge, though, so they just stumble a few inches forwards. On my left flank, the Terrorgeist pivots and adds its scream to that of the Tomb Banshee, and we almost kill 2 Ushabti just with screams, which is always really, really good. And then just the Graveguard in the centre and the Skeletons on the right flank, they just keep moving forwards. Obviously, the positioning of the Blood Knights means they're now a little bit in the way, so I'm just doing a bit of wiggling around to try and get back into position. And the Zombie Dragon makes a heroic return and flies through the trees to start threatening other things on the board. Now he's eaten his way through the Necrosphinx. Chris's turn 3. And it's his turn now to fail all of his spells, or be dispelled. Apart from Unquiet Spirits, which rolls like 15 hits and kills the whole Direwolf unit on its own. But broadly, in terms of how my magic's been going, I'm quite happy with that. That is what it is. Those Direwolves have been alive a lot longer than they probably should have been. The Tomb Guard now decide it's their turn to charge. They make a charge into the Skeletons on my right flank. Somehow they only kill 1 skeleton, and then somehow my skeletons kill 2 Tomb Guard in return. The combat res basically works out much for muchness, and I think the Tomb Guard lose by 1, but they're indomitable, so they don't lose any models, and they elect to not give ground using their Nehekaran Phalanx rules, so just them being locked in position there. The remaining Ushabti and Skeletons on my left flank charge into my skeleton unit. I lose 6 skeletons this turn. Big rank or 2 of skeletons disappear, and I don't do any damage in return. As expected, the Tomb King on the dragon charges the Blood Knights. Blood Knights have this cool rule where anyone in the unit can challenge, which is really frustrating when you're trying to deal with a dragon, or if you are the person being the dragon. So obviously some random Blood Knight challenges the dragon, who then immediately kills him. But crucially, because of the 2-up armor save, he doesn't actually get any overkill. So because the Blood Knights have a musician, the Tomb King on dragon loses that fight. And the Blood Knights do elect to follow up, but those 3 annoying skeletons I didn't quite finish off before are in the way, so I end up in combat with them instead of following up into the dragon. I think that's okay. it gives me a chance to finish that unit off next turn. But yeah, it was good positioning from Chris there, knowing where I would end up. I did, because I moved through the trees though, I did lose a second Blood Knight to dangerous terrain, which when it's 300 points for a unit of 5, losing 60 points of Blood Knight to dangerous terrain is frustrating, but it's all good. It's all okay. I'm not annoyed about it at all. So my turn 4. I resurrect all of the dead skeletons, but I do fail to bring back that Blood Knight that died in the trees. I think something about dangerous terrain just makes things, you don't get up once you accidentally hit a tree. I managed to start getting some more spells off, which is good. Get Deathly Cabal off again on the Graveguard, and give it the 6-up ward save, which is going to be helpful for its charge into the Tomb Guard. Everything else, however, is dispelled. However, Chris does see some vengeance for his wizard being so much better than mine by being outclassed in the arts, rolling a double 1. He managed to blow up 6 of his own skeleton archers in his own unit from the miscast, which is always funny to watch. My zombie dragon charges the flank of the Tomb King, and is joined by the Blood Knights on the Overrun after they finish the skeletons. And I think this is the combat we all wanted to see. This is Zombie Dragon versus a Bone Dragon. Unfortunately, for a first round, it was a complete flop. I only do 1 wound to the Bone Dragon because of that stupid armour, and Chris does nothing in return. So it does end up him losing a few more wounds due to combat resolution, but we will follow up and get stuck in for what is going to be an epic fight. Linehammer starts to really take effect in the middle of the board, so my Graveguard pile into the flank of the Tomb Guard, and managed to pick off 3 over the course of the combat, despite losing a wound on the White Lord in a challenge. I don't really know why I declared a challenge. It was a bit stupid, but it was fun. White Lord manages to fail to kill the champion in the Tomb Guard unit, who then just slaps him with a 6 on the cleaving blow. The Tomb Guard, again, they lost the combat, but they elect not to give ground again. So they're just staying there, stuck in this fight that we now can't get out of. And my White Lord is starting to look a little bit nervous, having not managed to kill the champion and taking lots of attacks next turn. The Terrorgeist joins in the big multi-combat between the skeletons, and Ushabti. I managed to finish off 1.5 Ushabti, but lose a load of skeletons, which means I end up losing the combat again because Chris has a musician. So this is twice in this game where musicians have defined combats. I never normally put them in. I only put them in the Blood Knights just in case, and it is now costing me combats, because in this case it's very frustrating because I have to give ground. And Chris passes his test of restrain on both units, which allows the skeleton unit to reform and start turning around, looking at my Necromancer, who is currently chilling behind the back of the Graveguard unit, thinking he's going to be absolutely fine. He's not going to be fine. Chris's turn 4 begins with him getting all his spells off, including a cheeky Unquiet Spirits wound into the Terrorgeist. He does, however, fluff all of his regeneration rolls and doesn't get any wounds back on the dragon or resurrect any Ushabti, which is good for me. As I say, those skeletons that won the combat last turn somehow charged my Necromancer. Now, my Necromancer is ethereal, so he's not going to take any wounds from the attacks. And obviously I have the Battle Standard Bearer sitting nicely nearby, so I can take D3 off the combat resolution result, which should, in theory, 2/3 of the time keep the Necromancer alive. I do roll a 1 on the Battle Standard Bearer, which means these skeletons have just run into my Necromancer, who so far over the course of the game managed to cast 2 spells and then just get killed through crumbling away. Fun and games. So I am obviously going to start taking crumble with the rest of my vampires army. Everything's going to start crumbling away, and this could start getting messy, but we'll be all right. The big melee between Tomb Guard, Skeletons and Graveguard starts to tip a little bit in my favour. The White Lord survives the challenge in killing the champion, and Chris loses another sort of 5 or 6 Tomb Guard over the course of that combat. Dragon fight carries on. The Tomb King, he managed to eat a couple of Blood Knights this turn, but he still does lose the fight overall, which means he has to give ground. I think having the Blood Knights in there is not actually helping. It's given me an extra 1 on the combat res through close order and 1 from the banner, but I've only got 1 unit left, so Chris could quite easily just kill that next turn, meaning he's going to get a big combat res bonus effectively from what I'm not having and then getting kills off. Easier kills than you would get against the dragon. So the Blood Knights pass their test to reform and decide to go and do something else. But the dragon does follow up and keep hammering the side of the Tomb King. I lose a couple of skeletons to the end of phase crumble, but it's not too bad. So feeling relatively confident until my turn 5, where the crumbling does take effect, and I managed to roll an 11 on the Terrorgeist, meaning he takes like 7 wounds and just immediately puffs into thin air. So that's goodbye to Terrorgeist. That's 205 points I'm not getting back. It feels like he's done quite well this game though. Banshee moves up, and as a bit of revenge, manages to just in one go scream away Chris's Mortuary Priest. It's only a level 1 caster, so it's not Chris's General, which is on the dragon, so it's not going to cause Chris to crumble, but it is very satisfying nonetheless. The skeletons on my left flank, they charge into the last Shabti and kill it off nicely. Probably it's the combat res basically that finishes it. He could quite easily killed a couple of skeletons and swung it back in his favour, but was not to be. The Blood Knights decide to join the big infantry combat in what looks like it could be in the rulebook as a classic example of a multi-combat where you've got units in the rear, units in the side, units in the front, all a really big mess. It looks heroic, the Blood Knights charging in, but they then do nothing. And then Chris's Tomb Guard kills my White Lord with the Battle Standard Bearer, which is a very embarrassing display all round, really. I still just about managed to win the fight through combat res and a few more Tomb Guard crumble away. The dragon fight is now just a slogging match between the two monsters. I managed to get a few wounds through, which is good. He does a wound to me, though, in return, but then he loses a couple more to the overall combat resolution. So it looks like the zombie dragon is close to finishing off the Tomb King, but with the combat res and with Chris's armour on that dragon, it could be really challenging. And obviously now, because my Necromancer is gone, I've lost my regeneration, so I am just relying on my armour and ward save to keep me alive here. Finally then, going into what turns out to be the last turn 5, Chris manages to heal up his dragon, which is good, and then manages to use Unquiet Spirits just to finish off the Banshee. I figured there was a chance that would happen, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to go and scream at the Mortuary Priest because it made me laugh. The Tomb Guard in the big melee in the middle, they do finally pass out of this realm, crumbling away, which is satisfying to see. That's 28 Tomb Guard. It took basically, well, almost half my army to bring the things down, but we got there in the end. The two dragons absolutely knock lumps out of each other again. They are both alive, however, at the end of the game. He's just got 2 wounds left on the Tomb King, and I've got 3 wounds left on my zombie dragon. Chris's skeletons on the left flank, they have spun around after killing the Necromancer, and they charge into the flank of my skeletons. They do enough to take a big chunk out of the skeleton unit, but not enough to drop it below 25% for the victory points. Which means, ladies and gents, the end game scores. So through killing various bits and getting my banners, I have managed to score 1,293 victory points. Chris has successfully scored 907, which turns into a 386 victory point win for the vampire counts. And if we're looking at differential scores, that's about a 12-8 win for the vampires. So actually a really close game in the end. Great game. Love just running the infantry into each other. This is fantastic. And obviously with undead infantry, they just don't run away. So you're just slogging through stuff, especially that Tomb Guard. But it's a really close game, and I think after the second turn where I managed to kill all of the Necropolis Knights and end up in combat with the Sphinx, I think Chris thinks it's going to be an absolute floor wipe. But again, I failed to protect my Necromancer properly, which swings things back in my favour, and then do stupid things to lose my White Lord. So I almost snatched defeat from the jaws of victory there, but managed to pull it back. It really does highlight again that I think I'm just going to put my Necromancer on a Mortis engine. Does make it a large target, so it's more targetable by cannons and things like that. But I think with the dragon and the Terrorgeist running around, I think you'll do well to prioritise the Mortis engine, and if you do, the dragon and Terrorgeist will be on you very, very quickly, I think. So I'm going to give that a try, and that does cost me. I have to get rid of a unit of skeletons basically to fit that in. So That will be the next change, I think. And as I say, getting the Dreadlance on the Vampire on the Zombie Dragon, because the Spell Eater actually doesn't do enough damage for me on the charge. So I'm hoping the Dreadlance will fix that slightly. But really, really good game, really close game in the end. I'm hoping you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed a bit of Linehammer. Not too much kind of techie shenanigans going on there, just two big lumps of armies kind of hacking bits out of each other. So I really enjoyed playing it, and I will join you again soon for another battle report, I'm sure. Thanks for watching.
Huge thanks as always to my Grail Knight tier supporters, that is Morpheus Gaming, Mechanite, and most recently Creekhammer. Thank you as well to everyone else who's popping up on the screen right now. If you like what I do, you too can become a supporter of the channel, becoming a member down below, or if not, you can like the videos, share, watch. All of these things really have helped me grow the channel and will continue to help me expand over the next few months. There's a growing Close Order Discord linked down below. That's not a members-only Discord. There are members-only VIP areas, but it is something that you're more than welcome to join. We are starting to grow a great community there. It's quite active. Lots of great hobby going on down below as well. If you haven't subscribed, there'll be a link to subscribe on your screen over here, and there'll be another video to watch if you want to over there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.